On number 42, we have this function right here. Let's find all the critical numbers of f, and note here the domain of f is all real numbers. Okay, so to find critical numbers, let's take the derivative here. We'll need to use the product rule. So it's going to be the derivative of this times this. So that's 1/3 x to the 1/3 minus 1 is negative 2/3 times x minus 16th to the 1/5 power, plus we have to do this times the derivative of this, so that would be 1/5 x to the 1/3 times x minus 16th to the negative 4/5 power. 1/5 minus 1 is negative 4/5. Okay, so this is our derivative here. We have to think about two things. When is this 0? When is this undefined? To figure out when this is undefined, let's just take a look here for undefined. Okay, so this is, I'm just going to rewrite maybe in a little bit more user-friendly form. 1/3 times 1 over x to the 2/3, and x minus 16 to the 1/5 upstairs, plus 1/5 times x to the 1/3 over x minus 16 to the negative 4/5. Oops, that should just be a positive 4/5 there because it's in the denominator. So we see here that there are two places where we could run into trouble if either of these denominators is equal to 0. So we could have x to the 2/3 could equal 0. So that's x is equal to 0. Or we could have x minus 16 to the 4/5. That could equal 0. And that gives us trouble when x is equal to 16. So thinking about when our derivative is undefined gives us two critical points, two critical numbers. Let me just point out here that these are in the domain of the original function. The domain is all real numbers. Okay, so that's a couple cases down. Now we have to think about when is the derivative equal to 0? So now I'm thinking about solving this equation. Okay, how do I go about solving this equation? I want to clear out denominators. So I want to multiply on both sides by x to the 2/3 times x minus 16 to the 4/5 power. I want to clear out the denominators here. And so that would yield 1/3 times x to the, so 1/3 times x minus 16 to the 1/5 power times x minus 16 to the 4/5 power. That's just going to be, this times this is going to give us x minus 16. And then we have a x to the 2/3 in the denominator times x to the 2/3 upstairs. Those cancel out. Then we have plus 1/5 times x to the 1/3 times x to the 2/3 is x. X to the minus 16 to the 4/5 downstairs, x minus 16 to the 4/5 upstairs. Those cancel. And that's equal to 0 times this, which is 0. And so here we have a relatively straightforward equation to solve. So x over 3 minus 16/3 plus x over 5 is equal to 0. X over 3 plus x over 5 should be 8x over 15 is equal to 16 over 3. And so then cross multiply here. X is equal to 16 over 3 times 15 over 8. This should simplify down as that's 2 and that's 5. That should be 10. So here's our third critical point. This is the only one where the derivative is 0.